This is Isla Vista. Chances are, if you're watching this film, you're probably familiar with the place. But for those who aren't, let's paint a picture. Isla Vista is home to the University of California, Santa Barbara. Although the town itself lies about 10 miles west of downtown Santa Barbara. Ivy is known for quite a few things, especially the 20,000 college students that call this 1 square mile residential neighborhood home. I'm sure more than a few of us have heard it referred to as a college paradise. Some would say it's best known for its warm weather. Others would say it's best known for its fun waves or its golden evenings. Ivy's got oceanfront balconies right off the main street of Del Playa. There's plenty of places to relax, and the town is literally surrounded by sandy beaches. The Channel Islands are always looming somewhere off in the distance. Quite a few would agree it's the perfect place to experience life with friends during your college years. Yeah, and when there's over 20,000 college students basically running the town, there's going to be a lot of partying. But what if life in IV went far beyond overpriced bagels, long nights in the library, biking through stop signs, and blacking out on DP? In fact, Isla Vista is home to one of the most complex and stunningly beautiful ecosystems on Earth. All one has to do is look just beyond the party-ravaged balconies of DP, and just below the surface. This is Isla Vista, below the surface. Just beyond the oceanfront balconies of Del Playa lies the shores of the Pacific Ocean, a resource many of us have come to rely on and enjoy. Sometimes a few too many. But it is important to remember that we are not the only ones who are fond of these waters. We are only visitors at the shores of this subsurface world that so many other life forms call home. As we look out at its expanse, what lies beneath remains a mystery to many of us. The beach often offers glimpses of the mysteries that hide themselves beneath the sea. But as the moon pulls the tide from shore, a small window into a hidden underwater world is exposed. In the tide pools, curious observers can carefully explore their way through the rocky landscape that surfers were once gliding over just a few hours earlier. Land inhabitants take advantage of these low tides, like the great egret. It's not uncommon to see these white, tall small birds roaming the tide pools in search of small fish and invertebrates left by the tide. The great blue heron. Another IV hunter of the tides. These graceful creatures scan the tide pools for prey, waiting, almost motionless. A full-grown great blue heron can stand up to 4 feet tall, with a wingspan of nearly 6 feet. Seagulls and pelicans often seek refuge on the exposed rocks at low tide, enjoying a safe place to meet and congregate before the tide rises once again. Low tides can also reveal structures of the past, such as these I-beams from the pier pilings of the old oil pier that used to extend southeast off the point at Devereaux. Most of these beams and the rocks surrounding them are covered with mussels, barnacles, chitons, and gooseneck barnacles. The aggregating anemones that cover much of the intertidal reefs close up during low tide to protect themselves from drying out in the sun. The deeper we immerse ourselves into each tide pool, the stranger the organisms become. Many organisms that find themselves stranded waiting for the next tidal push will soon be covered as the ocean begins to reclaim the small stretch of land as quickly as it was exposed. Local tidal changes of up to 8.5 feet can leave the areas of reef we were just exploring completely submersed in a matter of hours. Many species use these high tides to comb the shallows in search of food, including these zebra perch that don't seem to mind the breaking waves. Schools of these perch can often reach well into the hundreds. Sometimes, as many IV oceangoers have figured out, these shallow waters are also patrolled by a much larger, predatory species of fish. Leopard sharks. And lots of them. Growing up to 6 feet in length, these predators often swim the calm, shallow waters just east of Coal Oil Point, or Devereaux as many of us call it. Although they may give the occasional swimmer a scare, these sharks are harmless. They will often scare easily when humans come close. They comb the sandy bottom searching for small fish, mollusks, crustaceans, and not human flesh. We're lucky to have these leopard sharks here in Isla Vista. There are only a handful of aggregations this large in California. They're not here all the time. Little is known about where they go, or why they even decide to appear at this location in the first place. These shallow, sandy areas can also act as great hiding places for the few that know how to hide. And the California halibut knows how to do just that. These flatfish remain motionless, buried in the sand, waiting for small fish to swim by to prey on. Other species, such as stingrays, like this one, are also masters of camouflage. The thornback ray and the shovel-nosed guitarfish also bury themselves in sand in order to avoid predators and search for prey. Occasionally, during spring and summer months, much larger fish will make their way into the shallows as well. The white sea bass, sometimes known as the ghost fish, after their silvery appearance and ability to vanish quickly. Once fished to alarmingly low numbers, the white sea bass have made a remarkable recovery since the 1980s. This species has been known to commonly reach over 50 pounds, with select fish reaching the 80 to 90 pound range, although specimens of that size are often found out in the outer kelp beds. On the seafloor, surrounding eelgrass provides shelter for crustaceans such as this kelp crab, and even the occasional swell shark egg, if you're lucky enough to find one. And those weird brown squishy things we saw at low tide? Well, those are sea hares. They cling onto the rocks in the current, wandering the shallow reefs and grazing on algae and searching for mates. The closed anemones that we once saw at low tide open themselves to feed in the colder water. Although beautifully colored, these tentacles help catch and paralyze small fish and invertebrates that are unfortunate enough to make their way into the anemone's grasp. Above the shallow reef, bait fish that seek shelter from the open ocean often gather and sun themselves among the kelp in the shallows. This incredible abundance of life all resides just offshore of our local beaches, and we haven't even gone deeper than 10 feet of water. As we venture out slightly deeper, patches of eelgrass begin to be replaced by huge stalks of Macrocystis pyrifera, or giant kelp. Although the kelp beds here in Isla Vista only reach maximum depths of about 40 feet, individual stalks can grow over 100 feet long. These towering columns of kelp are anchored to the ground by an intricate series of roots, or holdfasts, that keep the kelp securely fastened to the surrounding reef in heavy current and swell. These holdfasts work. most of the time. These giant towers of algae reach the surface for sunlight. They need it to grow, just as most other plants do. And growing happens to be a specialty of giant kelp. It is regarded as one of the world's fastest growing organisms, growing at a rate of nearly 3 feet per day under proper oceanic conditions. This vast expanse of kelp at our local reefs creates a dense forest that is home to an entire underwater ecosystem. Calico bass, also known as kelp bass, school underneath the kelp canopy. The California sheepshead, a species that can change its sex from female to male in a matter of weeks, also seeks shelter underneath this canopy. Unfortunately, kelp is not the only thing that rises to the surface in our local kelp beds. The Santa Barbara Channel is home to the Western Hemisphere's largest natural oil and gas seeps, half of which lie within 3 miles of Coal Oil Point. Natural deposits of petroleum and methane seep through the cracks in the seafloor and shoot for the surface. Underwater, however, this doesn't seem to have much of an effect on the local marine life. The California spiny lobster. They take up nearly every hole and crevice in our local marine preserve. Although most lobster fall within the size that you may find at a local market, a few lucky ones have avoided the local fisheries and have grown to the 10 to 12 pound range, making them even larger than small dogs. This one here, found about 25 yards from the breaking surf at Devereaux, was one of the lucky ones. These guys can do much more than just crawl around and hide all day. They'll bail if they feel threatened. Sharing the seafloor with these lobster is another inhabitant of the reef, the octopus. These cephalopods are not only able to change their color, but they also can change the texture of their body to match surrounding environments. When out in the open, octopi crawl the reef in search of small invertebrates and crustaceans to prey upon, using their incredible camouflage abilities to both sneak up on prey as well as hide from predators. They're intelligent too. Octopi are some of the smartest creatures on Earth, with communicative and problem-solving skills that rival those of most mammals. It is possible that octopi may even be capable of conscious thought, giving them intelligence similar to that of a small child. When camouflage doesn't do the trick, species like this California two-spot octopus will flare up in bright colors and flash 2 bright blue spots that act as artificial eyes to ward off predators. Oftentimes, these octopi will spend much of the day sheltered in holes and crevices. Here, a condensed 5-minute time-lapse shows a rather large octopus moving about its chosen home off Devereaux Point. Notice the constant changes in color and shape, as it is not sure what to make in my camera setup. This one didn't seem to take kindly to intruders. This strange mass of membrane and tentacles belongs to the red abalone. These large marine snails suction themselves to surrounding reef, protecting themselves with a thick, bowl-shaped shell grown on their backs. As with most snails, abalone aren't very fast, unless it senses there's kelp nearby. Kelp is an abalone's favorite snack. These red abalone are estimated to live up to 50 years and have been known to exceed a shell diameter of over 12 inches. Although abalone of this size aren't common in local waters, it is possible that there are abalone that have lived off the very same rocky outcropping off Del Playa since before many of the current university students here were born. Abalone aren't the only kelp harvesters on the reef. Sea urchins, and lots of them. They use their spines, as well as the small tentacle-like feelers in between them, to grab onto nearby pieces of kelp and bring them to their mouths. Although the local urchin populations are somewhat in check, an overabundance of these spiny creatures can clear out an entire kelp forest, leaving only urchin barrens behind. Many species of fish seek refuge in the life-filled structures of reef provided by the ocean floor. Kelp rockfish, like this one, aren't an uncommon sight hiding on the reef. Garibaldi, these bright orange guys, which happen to be our state fish, often school together and hide in small holes in the reef when in danger. Horned sharks, an unusual sight during the daytime, often hide themselves deep in crevices, only coming out at night to search the reef for small invertebrates to prey on. Notice the two white spines or horns on each of the shark's dorsal fins. Among the kelp, if you look closely, you may even be lucky enough to find a little kelp fish, which often vanish as soon as they appear. Giant keyhole limpets climb their way around the reef structures, grazing on just about anything they can fit into their mouths. The California wavy turban, a mollusk whose shell we often find washed up on the beach here in IV, cover the local reefs in great numbers. Note the eye of this one, peeking out from just under the shell to check out my camera. Ever see rocks on the beach riddled with holes? That's thanks to these guys, the pittock clam, a species of burrowing clam that uses sharp bits of its shell to ground down surrounding rock and burrow its way into the seafloor. Not everything we see on the seafloor in Isla Vista is natural. Remember the I-beams from the old pier pilings we saw at low tide? There are plenty of them out here too, and they've become a part of the reef itself. And the remnants of the old oil pier are far more than just a few I-beams. An entire foundation of the old oil pier lies southeast off Devereux Point, strewn out among a 50 square foot patch of reef in about 25 feet of water. What was once the product of industrial human consumption now serves as a home for an incredible variety of marine life. Giant rock scallops cover the structure, only visible by their bright orange or green lips. These scallops open their shells and filter nutrients out of the surrounding water column. Among the scallops, a cabezone rests and waits for its next meal. These cabezone are masters of camouflage and will often lie motionless, blending in with the reef until the last possible moment. This particular cabezone was extra stubborn. He's a father. During the next 2 to 3 weeks, he will risk his life against hungry predators in order to guard the eggs he has fertilized, ensuring the survival of the next generation of his species on our local reefs. The old pier wreck also serves as a great home for the California chestnut cowrie, a small snail that covers the top of its shell with its own mantle, keeping growth off the shell and polishing it in the process. Brittle stars move about, among a beautiful assortment of colors on the wreck. Among some of the most colorful is the Spanish shawl nudibranch, which covers the remains of the old oil pier. These vibrant sea slugs will only grow to a couple inches at the most, but make up for it in color. Here, a couple lays and fertilizes their eggs. These little guys can swim too, although they're not very good at it. Back in the water column, bat rays fly through the kelp, a common sight in Southern California. With a wingspan that can reach up to 6 feet in length, these bat rays are some of the larger fish that frequent our kelp beds. It's not uncommon to see marine mammals either, like this curious little harbor seal. And on occasion, if you're lucky, you might be able to catch a glimpse of a true predator. to soupfin shark, and a large one at that. This species, which is basically harmless to humans, was once frequently caught, definned, and thrown back in the ocean and left to die, just to meet the human demand for shark fin consumption. Fortunately, this species has been a more frequently common sight in our local kelp beds over the years, having made a bit of a comeback from the harsh fishing pressures during the 20th century. Almost all of the waters around Isla Vista are a state-designated marine preserve. That means that the take of all marine resources, from the tip of Campus Point to the very western end of Sands Beach, is strictly prohibited. This marine preserve is part of the reason why we have such an abundant and beautiful array of life here in Isla Vista. Unfortunately, we are still having an indirect, negative impact on these protected animals. Remember that partying we saw at the beginning of the documentary? It can be fun, I know, and Isla Vista is kind of known for it. But sometimes we get so caught up in having a good time that we forget most of us are only 4-year visitors to this town. We can't just trash it and leave. Sunday morning party leftovers often lie trashed in yards and streets. And if the wind doesn't eventually blow them into the ocean near Campus Point, they accumulate in the gutter. And gutters lead to storm drains. And many storm drains in Isla Vista, unfortunately, lead directly off the cliffs of DP and straight into the ocean. So how do we fix this? Aside from the obvious answer of not littering everywhere, it is important to make a habit of picking up stray trash, even if it's not ours. If we see trash, it becomes our problem. No surf session is complete without grabbing a piece of trash off the beach on your way home. Take some time to grab a few pieces on the way home from your morning run or bike ride home from school. You can even volunteer at beach cleanups in IV or events with the Isla Vista Parks and Recreation. But when it comes down to it, picking up trash does not address the root of the problem. In a culture that has been built on consumerism and single-use commodities, we, myself included, are the ones who make trash a thing in the first place. On a larger scale, we are all in some way or another contributors to global climate disruption, which can have an effect on us both inside and outside of IV. Supporting unsustainable industries and practices that pollute the air, the sea, and the earth is all too interwoven into a society we live in today. But together, we can take small steps in the right direction that can make a huge difference in the long run. Styrofoam and single-use plastics, which take decades to decompose, are huge contributors to ocean pollution and marine debris. These can simply be replaced with reusable water bottles, Tupperware, and multi-use glass containers. And lowering energy consumption can greatly reduce our carbon footprint. Carpooling or even biking to school helps lessen our dependence on fossil fuels. Simply taking the seconds needed to throw away recyclables in the blue bin rather than the trash can give specific single-use items a second life. Even voting helps, because at the end of the day, we can choose the laws, policies, and elected officials that will help support a sustainable future. It is these simple changes that can make a huge impact not only on the marine ecosystem here in IV, but the ocean as a whole. And not only to Isla Vista as a community, but to our species as a whole. This documentary was my own attempt to make IV and beyond a better place, told from a perspective that I feel carries deep importance, and supported by all the underwater friends I've made along the way. It is now in your hands to make your own difference and make IV and the world around it a better place in any way you know how.